In a time of unprecedented global change, inventors pushed the boundaries of technology. Nations sought a decisive edge through radical new machines. Among the flurry of ideas, one concept stood out for its sheer audacity and colossal scale. It was unlike anything ever imagined before. This wasn't just another armored vehicle, it was a land-based battleship, a rolling fortress intended to dominate any terrain it encountered. The project was born from the mind of a Russian engineer who believed bigger was unequivocally better, a belief that would be put to the ultimate test. Known officially as the Lebedenko tank, it would earn a more fitting nickname, the Tsar Tank, a name that reflected its immense ambition and royal backing. Its design was a radical departure from the tracked vehicles being developed elsewhere. It relied on two gigantic 30-foot-tall spoked wheels. The goal was simple: to create a machine so large it could cross any obstacle, and so imposing it would demoralize any opposition. But this story isn't one of triumph. It's a cautionary tale of ambition colliding with the unforgiving laws of physics and nature. Join us as we uncover the incredible story of the Tsar Tank, the giant that was designed to be unstoppable but got stuck immediately. It began with a bold vision presented to the most powerful man in the Russian Empire, who held the project's fate in his hands. The mastermind behind this behemoth was Nikolai Lebedenko, an engineer working in a private firm that supplied the Russian state. He wasn't a traditional military designer. His expertise was in other areas, which perhaps explains his highly unconventional approach to armored vehicles. His inspiration came not from contemporary mechanics, but from something far more traditional: the large-wheeled carts of Central Asia. He observed that these carts could traverse difficult terrain and obstacles more easily than those with smaller wheels. A simple but powerful idea. Lebedenko reasoned that if he scaled this principle up to a gargantuan size, no trench, wall, or battlefield could stop his machine. He enlisted the help of several other prominent Russian scientists, including Nikolai Lebedenko, a founding figure in modern aerodynamics. Their combined expertise lent credibility to a project that might have otherwise been dismissed as pure fantasy. The team was formidable. Together, they refined the concept, calculating the immense power needed and the structural integrity required to support such a massive frame. The next step was the most crucial: securing the approval and funding from the highest authority in the land, Tsar Nicholas II. To win him over, Lebedenko prepared a special demonstration, not with blueprints, but with a fully functional miniature model of his creation. In a grand hall of the palace, Lebedenko met with Tsar Nicholas II. The fate of his colossal machine rested on this single meeting. Instead of unrolling complex blueprints, Lebedenko presented a beautiful, intricate model of the tank, crafted from wood and metal. This model wasn't just static. It was powered by a gramophone spring, a clever piece of showmanship designed to capture the Tsar's imagination. Lebedenko wound it up and set it down on the thick palace carpet. He had stacked several thick books to simulate obstacles. With a whirring sound, the model sprang to life, its large wheels propelling it forward with surprising speed and determination. It easily climbed over the stack of books, demonstrating its theoretical ability to overcome any barrier in its path, just as Lebedenko promised. The Tsar, an avid enthusiast of novel engineering, was reportedly delighted. He laughed and played with the model alongside the engineer. The demonstration was a resounding success. The sheer novelty and impressive performance of the small model won the Tsar's full support. He immediately approved the project and allocated a substantial sum of 210,000 rubles for the construction of a full-scale prototype. With royal blessing and a full treasury, Lebedenko's dream was set to become a reality. The construction of the giant could now begin. The final design was breathtaking in its scale. The two main spoked wheels were nearly 30 feet, or 9 meters in diameter. A smaller third wheel was placed at the rear for steering and stability, measuring only about 5 feet in diameter. This was a critical design choice. The main body, or hull, was suspended between the large wheels, sitting about 26 feet off the ground. It was nearly 40 feet wide. The plans called for a formidable array of defensive emplacements, with a central turret on top and additional positions in sponsons on the sides. To move this 60-ton behemoth, the design incorporated two powerful Maybach engines, each producing an impressive 240 horsepower. These were trophy engines, taken from a downed German airship, representing the pinnacle of engine technology at the time, a significant prize. Each engine was responsible for driving one of the giant wheels, transferring immense power through a series of gears and automotive clutches. The projected top speed was around 10 miles per hour, or 17 kilometers per hour, a respectable pace for such a colossal machine. The crew was estimated to be around 10 men who would operate the engines, steering, and the various defensive systems from within the hull. On paper, it was a masterpiece of brute force engineering, a machine that seemed to have an answer for every conceivable obstacle. With the design finalized and funding secured, construction began in August 1916. The location was kept secret to protect the project. A special factory and camp were built in a forest clearing about 40 miles from Moscow, a monumental undertaking in itself. The logistical challenges were immense. Huge quantities of steel and other materials had to be transported to this remote location without drawing attention. Workers toiled in secrecy, forging the massive components of the tank. The scale of each piece was unlike anything they had ever handled. The giant spoked wheels were assembled piece by piece on the forest floor, their immense curves dwarfing the men who built them. Imagine the scene. In the heart of a quiet Russian forest, a metallic giant was slowly, methodically, being brought into existence. The main hull, a complex structure of armor plate and internal bracing, was constructed separately before being joined with the axle. The powerful Maybach engines were carefully installed and calibrated, their intricate mechanisms a stark contrast to the brute force of the tank's frame. The project consumed vast resources, a high-stakes gamble during a period of intense national strain. Failure was not an option they considered. After months of tireless labor, the impossible was achieved. The Tsar Tank stood complete, a metal behemoth ready for its first breath. The day of the first trial arrived in late summer. A commission of high-ranking officials gathered to witness the historic event. The Tsar Tank was an awe-inspiring sight. Its dark metal frame dominated the landscape, casting a long, imposing shadow across the clearing. Engineers scurried around its base, making final adjustments. The air was thick with tension, anticipation, and the smell of oil and steel. A close look at the wheels revealed the raw power of their construction. Thick steel rims and spokes designed to crush anything in their path. Inside the hull, the crew took their positions. The space was cramped, noisy, and filled with the complex controls of the untested machine. Lebedenko himself stood with the commission, his face a mask of nervous confidence. His entire reputation was on the line. The order was given. A deep silence fell over the clearing, broken only by the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves. Then, a cough of black smoke erupted from an exhaust pipe, followed by the deafening roar of the first Maybach engine catching. The second engine thundered to life and the entire 60-ton structure began to vibrate. The ground itself seemed to tremble in response. The moment of truth had arrived. With a tremendous groan of metal, the Tsar Tank began to move forward for the very first time. Slowly, majestically, the colossal machine rolled forward. Its immense weight pressed deep tracks into the soft forest floor. For a moment, it seemed like a complete success. The engines roared in unison, and the great wheels turned with unstoppable momentum. A large birch tree stood directly in its path. There was no attempt to steer around it. This was part of the demonstration. With a sickening crunch of splintering wood, the Tsar Tank rolled directly over the tree, snapping its trunk like a twig. The commission gasped. The raw power on display was terrifying and exhilarating. Lebedenko's vision of a terrain-crushing machine was real. The tank continued forward, its initial success seeming to confirm the genius of its unconventional design. But a fatal flaw was about to be exposed. The designers had miscalculated. The weight distribution was heavily biased towards the front wheels. The rear steering wheel carried very little load. As the tank moved further into the clearing, the ground became softer. The small rear wheel, designed to steer, began to sink. It didn't have the size or the traction to push through. It dug itself deeper and deeper into a ditch. Suddenly, the forward momentum ceased. The giant had traveled less than 100 meters before grinding to a complete halt. The engines roared louder as the crew desperately tried to apply more power, but the situation only grew worse. The massive front wheels, their traction now compromised, began to spin in place, churning up huge clods of earth and mud. The colossal machine was completely and utterly stuck. The unstoppable fortress was defeated by a patch of soft ground. A stunned silence fell over the commission. The triumphant cheers from moments before were replaced with disbelief and disappointment. Lebedenko's face fell. His grand vision, his masterpiece of engineering, had failed in the most simple and humiliating way possible. The powerful Maybach engines, capable of propelling an airship, were powerless to unstick the 60-ton machine from the Russian mud. Every attempt to free the tank failed. It was too heavy, too unbalanced, and too deeply entrenched. The test was a categorical disaster. The fundamental design flaw was now painfully obvious. The rear wheel needed to be as robust as the front ones, or the weight needed to be balanced. The military commission quickly concluded the project was not viable. Further funding was immediately canceled, sealing the Tsar Tank's fate. After a single disastrous test run of just a few minutes, the most ambitious armored vehicle project of its time was over. With the project canceled, there were no funds to recover the 60-ton machine. Efforts to pull it from the mud were half-hearted and quickly failed. So, it was simply abandoned. The Tsar Tank, once the pride of Russian ingenuity, was left to rust in the very spot where it failed. The secret factory and workers' camp were dismantled, and the forest was left to its silence, now home to a bizarre, man-made monument. For years, the metal behemoth stood as a silent, melancholy landmark known only to locals and the occasional curious official. Nature began its slow, inevitable process of reclamation. Rust started to creep across the vast steel plates, turning them a deep, mottled brown. Vines and creepers began to climb its massive wheels, wrapping around the spokes as if trying to pull the giant back into the earth. Birds nested in the crevices of its armor, and small animals found shelter in the shadow of its motionless frame. It became a ghost of ambition, a powerful symbol of how even the grandest plans can be undone by a simple, overlooked detail. The political turmoil that followed in Russia ensured that the Tsar Tank was forgotten by all but a few. It had more pressing concerns. The machine remained in its forest grave for 7 long years, a silent testament to a dream that had sunk into the mud. By 1923, the world had changed dramatically. The Russian Empire was gone, and the new Soviet government had little time for imperial follies. The decision was made to finally dismantle the rusting hulk. The metal was valuable, and the wreck was a reminder of a bygone era. Workers returned to the clearing, not to build, but to deconstruct. They brought with them torches and tools to cut the giant apart. Piece by piece, the Tsar Tank was disassembled. The massive wheels, the armored hull, the powerful engines, all were cut into manageable sections. The steel that was meant to forge a path to glory was hauled away to be melted down and repurposed for the new state. Soon, nothing remained in the forest clearing but the deep, muddy ditch where the tank had met its end and a few forgotten bolts. The Tsar Tank vanished from the physical world, but its story survived, passed down as a legend of engineering hubris. It serves as a powerful lesson. The most complex and powerful machine can be defeated by the simplest of flaws and the laws of nature. While tracked vehicles would go on to define ground machinery, the Tsar Tank remains one of history's most fascinating and spectacular dead ends. A colossal monument to ambition, a testament to the fine line between a stroke of genius and a magnificent 60-ton failure.